In the 5th year of following that carefree playboy, someone caught a photo of me looking pregnant. Rumors spread like wildfire online, all assuming I was using a baby to force my way into marrying into high society. When his long-lost first love caught wind of the news, she flew back home, expecting a storm. But by the time Lou Heron returned from his business trip, he only heard that I had terminated the pregnancy and slipped back to my hometown. Well, good girls like me can fool around all we want, but if we actually end up pregnant without a proper title, our parents would beat us to death. Late at night, right after hanging up the doctor's call, the doorbell rang. I zipped up my suitcase and turned to open the door. A man stood there in a cold, rigid leather jacket, tossing the heavy sports car keys into my arms. "Why did you change the door code?" he asked, displeased. I pursed my lips and whispered, "I was afraid some private stalker would camp out at my door." He gave a disdainful snort. "With this neighborhood security, even a cat can't get in without being registered, let alone a real person." Then he added, "Or maybe someone can still get in." I thought silently, like your first love did, for instance. She came over and kicked my door down. I took his coat and stood on tiptoe to hang it up. Besides the familiar scent of fur, there was a hint of cloying women's perfume, exactly the same as the one on yesterday's unexpected guest. I pretended not to notice. He suddenly reached out, using his knuckles to brush my eyes. "You've been crying." I was startled, not expecting him to notice my slightly swollen eyes. I made up a casual lie, watched a movie. Seeing me lower my long lashes, his gaze followed downward, noticing my bare feet. The autumn chill was growing, but the carpet hadn't been laid yet. He frowned slightly, then scooped me up in one swift motion, supporting my bottom as he carried me toward the sofa. He probably thought I was affected by the recent rumors, so he began, "People in this circle love to gossip. If getting pregnant could actually secure a marriage into a wealthy family, those women waiting eagerly for a chance would have already scrambled to throw themselves at me. This child has a different purpose for me. Be good. Don't learn from those fools who dream of climbing up the social ladder. The position of the Liu family's wife is not that simple." These words were a warning, a veiled threat. He had many women around him over the years, but play was play. When it came to matters concerning family interests, he never minced words. Once I dared to think like other women in the circle and try to secure something with a child, he could take everything away at any moment and reduce me to what I once was. I was a bit tired, so I leaned on his shoulder and softly replied, Suddenly his gaze paused, and he noticed my suitcase on the floor. "Going back to your hometown again?" He frowned almost imperceptibly. I said. "My parents said they miss me. Over the years, every time I felt wronged, I'd run home. I'd say I never wanted to come back, and then secretly book the earliest flight back because I missed him too much." Since the Mid-Autumn Festival was coming up, he didn't think much of it. "Stay a few more days. Keep your distance from those with crooked intentions. As for the child matter, let's talk about it later." He didn't mention the white moonlight who returned from abroad, and I tactfully didn't ask. I fell in love with Lou Heron at first sight. If you ask me whether it's more affection or more gain, it's definitely a physical, visceral attraction. As a good girl raised under rigid rules since childhood, I followed the path my parents laid out through every stage of life, attending a normal university, majoring in literature, and returning to my alma mater after graduation. My belated rebellion erupted in my first year of work. From the eyes of my fellow teachers, I saw a future that was already predetermined: teaching, blind dates, marriage, children. On a sweltering yet mundane summer afternoon, I stared blankly for a long time at the lesson plan on my desk and the bouquet of roses left by the new male teacher. I've known since childhood that I was blessed with a pretty and obedient exterior. The number of boys who showed interest in me was countless, so many that I felt like an easy catch, a commodity. It was annoying and depressing. Of course, there were sincere ones among them, but their shy blushes and nervous stammers always left me uninterested. I wanted to tear off the label stuck on me, to become someone who stands out and is admired, someone so unattainable that others would look up in awe. This unrealistic desire kept being suppressed, only to resurface again and again, until a friend who works as an agent asked me if I was interested in joining their talent show. That was probably the most rebellious thing I've ever done in my life. I quit my job, cut off my heavy bangs, and returned to Kyoto. Everyone says the entertainment industry is a tough road, but I was young back then, having just made a name for myself on a talent show. I thought I was a star destined for greatness, full of passion for the road ahead. Until half a year later, when I kept hitting dead ends, facing contract termination with my company, no roles to shoot, and even getting harassed by a producer who lecherously promised that if I just went along with him, he'd make me a star. I looked at his bald head and silently averted my gaze. It wasn't like I had to be a star, at least I couldn't stomach that. I thought my acting career, which had barely started, was about to be buried, but then I met Lou Heron. In a private room packed with D-list celebrities and directors, this cynical playboy sat at the head of the table, his voice flirtatious, lips curved lazily, a cigarette perched between his long, well-defined fingers. The expensive watch on his wrist swayed in the fragmented light, a sight that was a feast for the eyes. The moment I saw him, I was lost. What can I say? A good girl like me has no defense against a rogue with that kind of charm, especially when he chose me, pursued me with a grand display, and publicly admitted in front of the media that I was his little girlfriend. You can imagine. In the sultry late-night breeze, a languidly handsome rich boy leaned against his multi-million-dollar red convertible, one hand in his pocket, and a large bouquet of delicate, fragrant red roses on the passenger seat. When he smirked at me from across the crowd, it was absolutely breathtaking. This was the kind of person I had never encountered in my dull, monotonous first half of life, and the first time I heard my own heart thumping loudly in my chest. My best friend was endlessly tolerant of me. Regarding this unequal relationship, she said matter-of-factly, "What's the big deal? For a good girl like you, only after you've had your fun with some wild one can you settle down and marry a proper man. A rich playboy like Lou Heron, even a fraction of what he spends would be enough to support you for a lifetime. Seriously, you should milk it for all you can before he gets bored." I wholeheartedly agreed, so I willingly drowned myself in the tenderness he crafted. Lou Heron was very generous and never stingy with gifts. When he found out I wanted to act, he personally brought scripts to me and let me choose. Because of him, all the difficulties on set disappeared. The path to the Golden Rooster Awards had become incredibly smooth. I only needed to polish my acting skills a bit more. If it weren't for the return of his first love, I might have greedily stayed by his side for another 2 years, striving to win this highest honor. I had long heard about this Chinese actress who had only recently made a name for herself after years of struggling in Hollywood. When Lou Heron's close friend first met me, he compared me to her. Pretty, yes, but too soft. Nowhere near Shen Lan's fiery spirit. That was the first time I learned of the name Shen Lan, a name Lou Heron had once loved to the point of heartbreak and later hated to the marrow. In the end, the reason his arrogant circle of friends tolerated a small-time star like me was simply that they felt Shen Lan had hurt him too deeply. Everyone in their circles believed he needed someone to stay by his side and help him heal. The dazzlingly beautiful actress arrived at my home with bodyguards, smashed my door, shattered my vases, and threw my kitten out the window right in front of me. The cat's piercing cries made my whole body tremble, tears streaming uncontrollably, yet I couldn't even manage to utter a complete curse. She clapped her hands slowly, looking me up and down with pity, saying that if I could make Lou Heron willing to keep me for 5 years, she thought I was someone with real skills, but it turns out I'm just a pushover. But then again, a pet with no temper. Anyone would be willing to keep it for a few more years, since it doesn't require any effort to coax. My whole body was trembling, and my crimson lips were bitten until they bled. Trespassing, property damage, and animal abuse. If I reported these and they got out, it could ruin her in minutes. The bodyguard blocked my doorway. She seemed to read my thoughts and directly cleared a path for me, saying arrogantly, "Go ahead. There's a police station 200 meters to the right from the exit. You can go right now and see who ends up on the trending searches." She was so brazen, clearly backed by some confidence, and that confidence probably came from Lou Heron.
But I didn't think she was in the right.
As far as I know, you and Mr. Lou aren't even exes. May I ask what authority you have to break in here? Authority. She seemed to find it a joke, curling her lips in mockery. That rainy night, he raced on the viaduct to chase after me and nearly lost half his life. What authority do you think I need? He brought you around so ostentatiously just to put on a show for me, to force me to yield. She scoffed disdainfully. You really think he likes obedient girls? I clenched my fingers and managed a cold smile, mimicking her. But I'm carrying his child. Do you think he'll just ignore that? Shenlong couldn't help but laugh at my words. You don't really think you can control him with a child, do you? Her voice was light as her gaze dropped to my slightly swollen belly. Before he came back, he called me and said that if I were willing to back down, he could have the child aborted. Seeing the color drain from my face, the curve of her lips grew wider. Casually, she said, "But what if I don't back down? Miss Jiang, tell me, if next time my bodyguards are a little too rough, or if I accidentally bump into you, will he blame me for being out of line, or will he blame that child in your belly for being such an eyesore?" The setting sun streamed through the window, filling the sky with rosy clouds and reflecting the determination in her eyes. My blood ran cold, and I was struck dumb, unable to utter a single word. She carried a confidence that bordered on control, something I could never have. Even after being by Lu Heron's side for so long, I never truly understood my standing with him. Just like the first time we met, his gaze wasn't on me, but on a minor celebrity who resembled Shenlong. As for why he chose me later, perhaps it was just to use my gentle obedience to prove that he would no longer cling to that fierce, white moonlight. Since he only wanted a child, anyone would do, so why should I wade into this muddy water? But if you ask me whether Lu Heron truly had no feelings for me in those 5 years, I can only say I don't know. He only seemed frivolous and passionate, but in fact, he never took many things seriously. For example, all the holiday gifts he gave me were bought by his assistant. The restaurants for our dates were always chosen casually. But occasionally, when I encountered trouble on set, he didn't mind personally showing up to support me. During the 5 years I was with him, he also spent huge sums several times to produce female-led dramas tailor-made for me, inviting Academy Award-winning actors as supporting roles and top directors to helm them. It seemed like the utmost pampering, but he never considered that my image wasn't suitable for a strong female lead. So every film she starred in flopped, to the point where it baffled everyone in the industry. Once she even won the Golden Broom Award, and when a fellow young actress mocked her poor acting, she was so upset she cried in his arms all night. Back then, he might have been grooming me to be like Shenlong, but I was least like Shenlong in that regard. He probably found it amusing, a teasing glint in his eyes. My acting was indeed terrible, not nearly as heartfelt as my crying in bed. Over the years, I was probably the first investment of his that was a guaranteed loss. He had had a few drinks that day, maybe in a good mood, or maybe he just didn't care, so he pinched my cheek with amused interest, then called the organizers in front of me and arranged for that young actress to also receive a Golden Broom Award. It sounds childish, but people are always moved by such childish things. Just like how I agreed to have a child with him. That evening, he was the one who was drunk, but I was the one who, bewitched, said yes. At that time, his father was critically ill, and the children from all branches were busy blocking news and fighting over the inheritance. As the youngest and most favored son, he was naturally targeted from every angle. For a few months, he didn't come to see me. During that period, a big shot in the industry thought I had been dumped, so he started making advances, asking if I would be with him. I refused again and again, as tactfully as possible, but still managed to displease him. After a dinner party, he grew furious and cornered me in the hallway, tearing half my skirt. Luckily, my agent rushed over in time to stop the commotion. After that, I kept running into trouble on set. Someone kept sabotaging my work, and even my wire work kept malfunctioning. The news eventually reached Lu Heron's ears, and he made a special trip to the set to pick me up after work. In the sunset-filled evening, that black Maybach appeared abruptly, yet silently outside the studio. As soon as I got in the car, I caught a strong smell of alcohol, vodka. He must have had quite a bit. Large patches of alluring red flushed across his neck, his collar loosely open, that striking red spreading down to his cold white chest, even more vivid than the sunset. He had lost weight. He pulled me into his arms, his long fingers kneading the soft flesh around my waist. Beneath his languid voice, there was hidden exhaustion. "You don't eat properly when no one's watching, do you?" My nose tingled, and I replied softly, "No, it's because the new character needs to be a bit thinner." He held me like that for a while, then said, "These days, Old One will pick you up and drop you off. Call him anytime if something comes up." Old One was his personal driver. For those with ill intentions, this was a veiled warning. I sniffled and said, "Okay." In truth, it wasn't just me who had lost weight, he had lost a lot too. This was probably the first time in years I had seen him so somber and exhausted. So when he spoke up and said he wanted a child, I was stunned for a long time. It wasn't the first time he had brought up children, but the previous two times he had smiled lazily and said he was bored and wanted to raise a kid for fun. But this time, he didn't smile. There's always so much drama in wealthy families. If it weren't for some situation, he probably wouldn't be so eager to have a child. How about it, my darling? He ruffled my hair, his breath still carrying the scent of alcohol. Let's have a child of our own. Just one child. People always have to pay some price for a smooth road in life. That was the excuse I made for myself. I gently pressed my forehead against his, my long lashes trembling slightly. Locking eyes with him, I whispered back with earnest sincerity. Okay, I said. I'll give you a child. The cost of having this child was huge. After news of my pregnancy got out, my endorsements were pulled, the drama I had signed on for was replaced, and social media was flooded with paid trolls. I was originally just a moderately well-known figure. But suddenly, a lot of negative rumors emerged, saying my acting was poor, that I got roles through connections, that I was unprofessional and arrogant. Some even called me a homewrecker, that I had intruded on someone else's relationship. My prenatal checkup report was inexplicably leaked. Headlines like, "Young mistress claws her way to the top," "Pregnant before marriage to force the crown prince's hand," "The one true love fled abroad," and the homewrecker's deep schemes trended on Weibo. It was impossible to tell whose hand was behind it. I had nightmares for several nights. I dreamed that a woman pushed me down, and there was so much blood on the floor. When I woke up in the middle of the night, my forehead and palms were covered in cold sweat. But I didn't think too much of it. I just felt that if I could give birth to this child quickly, everything would be fine. This went on for 4 months, until today I met Shinlan. What truly made me decide to abort the child was the last sentence she left behind. If Liu Heron wanted to solidify his position, what he needed to do was bring back a legitimate heir of the Liu family and a wife from a prestigious family who could bring him familial support. And Miss Jiang probably didn't know that when I was 14, I had an accident and had my uterus removed, so I can never bear children in this lifetime. Thus, who this child is intended for is already self-evident. She stopped just short of saying it outright and taunted, "But you know, I am a proud person and cannot tolerate another woman's child. Even if it were really born, I have 100 ways to make an accident happen. Miss Jiang, you should know what to choose." She turned and left with her entourage of bodyguards, seemingly leaving the choice to me. But in reality, every word was a threat. The orange-red sunset was thick as blood. I stood alone in the messy living room for a long time, the soreness in my eyes gradually spilling over. My fingers curled slightly, and suddenly tears fell from my eyes. The clock on the wall ticked by, the shadows of the sunset slowly shifted, and the lonely times stretched infinitely. In these years by Liu Heron's side, I have had many moments of waiting alone. He always did things on a whim. One moment he'd say he was coming over for the night, and the next he'd be off to a bar with his buddies. Outsiders called him a playboy, probably because when girls came onto him in those settings, he didn't mind opening a bottle of champagne for them amid the cheers, or even sharing a kiss. Occasionally, I'd accidentally stumble upon these scenes. Others would tease me, asking if I wanted to trade him in for a new boyfriend. Liu Heron would then lazily chime in, telling them not to corrupt me, and with that, he'd let go of the girl in his arms and pull me into his embrace. Their gazes were too mocking, so I'd blush and bury myself in his chest. He'd rest his chin on the top of my head, gently nuzzling my hair, and let out a satisfied sigh. So well-behaved. Later, after it happened more often, he'd nibble on my earlobe and ask in a seemingly casual tone, "Why do you never throw a fit? Aren't you jealous?" I stared at the chaotic lights in the private room, at a loss for how to answer for a long moment. Why didn't I make a scene? Was it because I was confident in my own charm? Or because I was clear-eyed about how it would never work out? Or maybe I just hadn't had enough fun yet. Most girls, by throwing a tantrum, can get some compensation and turn around to dive into the next round of luxury and indulgence. But I'm different. I wanted to enjoy a few more years by his side, so I never made a fuss. Aside from having a few more ambiguous girls around him, he was also very good to me. Because I casually remarked during New Year's, "Why aren't there any fireworks? The night sky above Victoria Harbor blazed with fireworks for the entire night. Because I showed a little extra fondness for a piece of jewelry, he raised the bid to tens of millions to buy it for me and personally put it on me in front of everyone. Because I wanted to see the snow, he booked an entire private cable car line at the Swiss Alps ski resort. I had kissed him passionately on the streets of Paris, learned to taste wine with him at a private estate in Italy, and driven his red Ferrari for a spin on the early morning streets. Behind these scenes was the support of unimaginable wealth for ordinary people. Having had these experiences, I felt content. When I actually started packing my bags, I surprisingly didn't feel much reluctance. People change. Thoughts at 23 and 28 are always different. Kyoto is nice, but Jiangxing is home. If Lou Heron had been a bit more observant, he might have noticed that my favorite vase, which used to sit at the entrance, was gone, that the usually clingy kitten, now wrapped in bandages, was listlessly licking its fur in its bed, and that there was a shallow cut from porcelain on my ankle. But he didn't notice a thing. After dinner, he went to the study to handle some matters. He was leaving for the US tomorrow to verify equity holdings and deal with a few illegitimate children, and it would likely be a while before he returned. This gave me the perfect window to get an abortion and leave. I took a look around the whole house. The wardrobe was mostly filled with luxury bags and jewelry, which would be useless even if I brought them back to Jiangcheng. Just as I was about to close the wardrobe door, a diamond-encrusted ring fell out. It was one that Lou Heron had specifically bid for at last year's auction to spite a rival's wife, and then gave to me. It was supposed to be a matching pair for men and women, but he threw away the men's version, probably as a hint for me not to get any ideas. I found the original velvet box and put the ring inside, then found a postcard, wanting to write something about these past 5 years. But after thinking it over, I couldn't think of anything worth writing. It was nothing more than a willing game of pretend. Just as I was about to fall into it, I almost felt grateful to Shinlon for pulling me out. Resting my chin on my hand, I wrote while daydreaming, the pen leaving ink blots at every pause in the sentence. Lou Heron, thank you for taking care of me these past 5 years. I really like Kyoto. It's always so lively here. But I often feel lonely too. I miss home and long to settle down. My parents are getting old and can't do without me. Don't blame me, Lou Heron. I mostly just write whatever comes to mind. At the end, I left a line. I hope you get what you wish for. Happy wedding. When I capped the pen, it was already midnight. Lou Heron had just finished his shower and came out. Seeing me tossing and turning in bed, he reached over and pulled the blanket off me, exposing my head so we could look at each other. Can't sleep? I pressed my lips together and whispered, a little. Because I'm not beside you? He raised an eyebrow slightly, bent down to meet my eyes. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded out of habit. Actually, I was just thinking about whether to change the departure date of my ticket. Although the doctor said a full anesthesia surgery could allow for same-day discharge, I wasn't sure if I could manage on my own. I always seemed to be used to relying on others. First my parents, then Lou Heron. The man's lips curled slightly, revealing an I knew it expression. High maintenance, he scoffed contemptuously. He threw back the covers and lay down, his black silk robe slightly open, revealing a few ambiguous marks on his chest, probably left by a woman's long nails. Not mine. My nails never dared to leave marks that deep. His words were dismissive, but his actions clearly showed he enjoyed it. As he lay down, he pulled me closer into his arms. I stared at the ceiling for a while, then suddenly turned over and asked him a question. Lou Heron, if I accidentally fell and miscarried, would you be angry? Don't know, he answered curtly. Perhaps because everything had been perfectly resolved, his voice returned to that lazy tone. Anyway, I don't like kids. Too loud and troublesome. Why are you asking about this? No reason. Just asking, I said mildly. I closed my eyes, just about to drift off. Suddenly, he placed his hand on my slightly swollen belly. Feeling the unfamiliar fetal movement beneath his palm, he remarked thoughtfully, if it's yours, it should be very well behaved. Actually, it's not well behaved at all. I tilted my head to receive his kiss, but in my mind, I was calculating how to get rid of the child and walk away unscathed. The next day, I woke up late. I thought Lou Heron had already gone to the airport, but I heard him on the phone with a friend in the living room. His phone was on the dining table, speaker on. Shenlong is anything but settled, and things are boiling over online right now. If you leave the country at this juncture, Aren't you worried something might happen to your little girlfriend? Something came up on my end. You keep an eye on things for 2 weeks. Lou Heron flicked the ash off his cigarette, saying nonchalantly. I just saw Shenlong yesterday. Her temper's as sour as ever. She wants me to go back to her, but she won't swallow her pride. There's no such good deal. Chunya's tone was mocking. How am I supposed to watch over her? Why not have Jiangyu come stay at my place for 2 weeks? You only wanted the kid to force Shenlong back for a marriage alliance. Now you've got what you wished for. Seriously, why don't you just hand your little girlfriend over to me? I've never had one that's so obedient and pure. Sure. Lou Heron replied lazily, his tone dripping with frivolity. If you want, go ask her yourself and see if she'll let you touch her. Chunyi caught the certainty in his words, leaned back in his chair, and remarked with a sigh, I really envy you, having such a devoted little girlfriend. So, do you actually want to have this child, or are you just trying to force Shenlong to submit? Lou Heron curled his lips, a hint of rare interest showing in his eyes. Let's see Shenlong's attitude first before deciding whether to have it or not. Chunyi asked curiously, all your talk is about Shenlong. Aren't you afraid your little girlfriend will be heartbroken? Maybe tomorrow she'll leave you for someone else. She won't, Lou Heron said lightly. I'm the one who gets bored and dumps people. There's no way she'd leave me. Besides, she's still thinking about winning the Golden Rooster Award. Why would she be willing to leave? As he said this, Lou Heron seemed to remember something, his face carrying an air of calm certainty. Her acting was terrible. Even if Shenlong made a huge scene, she wouldn't leave. He wasn't saying this without reason. Jiangyu's poor acting wasn't limited to on-screen performances. Back in the early days, the affection she had for him in her eyes was impossible to hide. Just a simple kiss. Her neck would flush pink with excitement, and she was too nervous to open her eyes and look at him. Later, there was a time when she was drunk, leaning against his chest, drawing circles with her finger, mumbling something unconsciously. He leaned in to listen and caught that sentence of a confession tinged with dependence. I like you so much, Lou Heron. He was also very drunk at the time. For a moment, his mind couldn't process those words. The subtle flutter in his heart he simply attributed to the alcohol. After a momentary daze, a playful, frivolous smile appeared in his eyes. This was the first time someone had so foolishly told him they liked him. Born into a wealthy family rife with open and covert struggles, he was blessed with a face that most resembled his father's. Having witnessed countless naked schemes, even his mother didn't seem to love him all that much. Raising him was merely a means to extort a hefty sum from his father. He learned early on that every act of ingratiation had an ulterior motive, just like the girls who flocked to him. Their mouths spoke sweet words, but their eyes were fixed on the limited edition handbags in the display cases. It wasn't until he met Shenlong, who flatly refused to marry into his family, that he first felt intrigued. She was the first person he'd encountered who wouldn't fawn over him. Later, taking in Jiangyu was just to provoke Shenlong, to see if she truly didn't care. Strictly speaking, a qualified mistress should never cross the line or harbor unrealistic fantasies about her benefactor. But he didn't find Jiangyu's feelings offensive. Instead, this sensation of being wholeheartedly loved, admired, and depended upon wasn't repulsive. It was addictive. Love is a sharp sword bestowed by heaven upon the one who is loved. You can become a knight guarding their heart with a sword, or you can just as easily pierce their heart with it. Once you're certain of their love for you, you gain the right to toy with their feelings, watching them give you their all, heart, and soul. Jiangyu was his first publicly acknowledged girlfriend, the first person he had ever built such an intimate relationship with, and he was acutely aware of his position at the top of this emotional hierarchy. So he naturally assumed that Jiangyu would always revolve around him, that she would be consumed by insecurity when Shenlong appeared, loving him until it hurt, until it drove her to despair. She would lie awake all night for him, shedding endless tears. For him, just the sound of those 2 words made his heart tremble. He couldn't wait to see the look of pain and devastation on Jiangyu's face when he chose Shenlong. He was so fixated on that image that he didn't even realize he was hoping Jiangyu would love him. The abortion went smoothly, just a blink of an eye. The autumn wind swept a maple leaf up to the window. I stared at it for a while, then suddenly reached out and touched my lower belly. Of course, I had also held hopes for this little life. I had clumsily learned to knit, but unfortunately never finished. Now it's no longer needed either. All those uncertainties, expectations, and worries about the arrival of a new life have vanished into thin air. Shun Lan came to see me, still with that aloof demeanor. Next month is the engagement party for Lu Heron and me. If Miss Jiang is unwilling to accept it, she could stay and make a scene. My voice was soft and gentle. No need. If you ask me, there wasn't that much love. It was just a 23-year-old me seeking novelty. I've gained enough over these years. There's nothing to make a scene about. Just then, a WeChat message came in. It was Lu Heron asking why I was in the hospital. Without batting an eye, I said, "Caught a cold." After all, he had never asked where my hometown was. Change my WeChat, throw away my SIM card, and from then on, trying to find me would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. The first time Lu Heron didn't receive a good night from Jiangyu, he just thought she was uncomfortable with a cold and didn't pay it any mind. But the second day there was none, and the third day also none. Usually, even though she was busy filming, she would occasionally send a couple of messages, telling him about interesting things that happened on set. He rarely tapped to listen, mostly converted them to text and glanced through. But now WeChat was terribly quiet, and he suddenly felt a bit unaccustomed to it. Fall comes late in Florida. Some brands asked through assistant Lin whether he wanted to add some autumn clothes for Miss Jiang. He held his phone, leaned back in his chair, and gave a faint honk. Normally, such trivial matters didn't need to be brought to his attention. Sure enough, the next second he heard assistant Lin say respectfully, "And some maternal and infant supplies, should they be sent over as well?" He slightly lifted his eyelids. Outside the window were large patches of red and green maple leaves. The bleak autumn wind swirled in the air with a chill. He rarely remembered that Jiangyu's due date was next spring. Actually, he didn't care about the child's fate, it was just a tool. But when these details about the little life gradually became clear and concrete, he inexplicably felt something different. It was his child. His Adam's apple moved slightly, and he ordered, "Send them over." After a while, he picked up his phone and sent her a message, telling her to have someone lay down the carpet in the room. He wasn't really considerate by nature, but when he remembered that she liked to walk barefoot around the house, he added a couple more sentences. "It's cold. Wear more clothes." By the evening of the fifth day, the chat window was still empty. She hadn't replied. This had never happened before. He rubbed his brow, inexplicably feeling a heaviness in his heart. Was she unhappy or angry? These two words applied to Jiangyu always felt unreal to him. After all, for 5 years, she had always been docile and obedient. He had never felt the need to explain anything to her. The pregnancy test result was leaked on his orders, and the online uproar was also his doing. He simply wanted the news to reach Xinlan's ears, to see if she truly didn't care about the position of Mrs. Liu. Jiangyu was someone who cared a lot about online comments. She had barely slept well during that period. She always worked hard at acting, but the results were often disappointing. Some people just weren't cut out for acting. Was she upset about knowing this? But they were just empty comments. Was it worth getting angry over? He hadn't mentioned Xinlan in front of her, nor had he told her about his engagement. So, what was she making a fuss about? Assistant Lin called at just the right moment, his tone cautious. "Mr. Liu, the autumn clothing and baby supplies have been delivered to Miss Jiang's door, but no one answered the doorbell." "That's normal." Jiangyu said she was going back to her hometown for a couple of days, but it's been nearly a week now, hasn't she returned? Asked the security guard. They said Miss Jiang took an injured cat with her the day she left. An injured cat? He keenly picked up on this detail. Jiangyu was very protective of that cat. Even when she went on location shoots for films, she'd hire someone to take care of it at home. Occasionally, when he slept over at her place, the cat would sleep between them. How could it get injured? He frowned. The assistant was clearly aware of this too. The security guard said the cat had accidentally fallen from the balcony on the 12th floor 2 weeks ago. Fortunately, it got caught in the treetops and was rescued. 2 weeks ago, that was exactly when Xinlan returned to the country. A suspicion arose in his mind, and a vague unease began to settle in his chest. Pull the surveillance footage and check what happened to the cat. Xinlan was always brazen about her actions, so the surveillance was easily accessed to reveal the events of that day. After his plane landed domestically in the early hours, Lu Heron directly dialed her number. His tone was calm and unreadable. Come to Mars Coffee. I'll give you 10 minutes. When they met, Shunlan directly tossed her bag onto the table and admitted generously, "Yeah, I went." "So what?" "I just wanted to see what kind of little toy could make you willingly keep her for 5 years. I thought she'd be something, but she got scared out of her wits the moment I came back. Didn't even dare to keep the child." Lou Heron let out a sneer, his voice suddenly turning cold. "Little toy? Is that what you thought when you threw her cat off the 12th floor? It's just a cat. So what if it died? Are you really going to turn against me for an outsider?" Hearing this, the man's usually nonchalant demeanor completely vanished, radiating a fierceness she had never seen before. His eyes were icy cold, each word dripping with sarcasm. "Shunlan, who do you think you are?" Shunlan was stunned. This was the first time he had spoken to her like this. "Keeping her is naturally because she pleases me. Unlike you, since you can't have children yourself, you can't stand seeing others have them." The words hit a nerve. Shunlan clenched her palms tightly and stood up in a reckless, self-destructive manner. "Lou Heron, what kind of attitude is this? Don't take your anger out on me. If you hadn't tacitly allowed it, how could those online storms have arisen? You used her as a pawn to force me back, and now you're pretending to be so devoted. Isn't losing the child exactly what you wanted? You just wanted to use the child to make me bow my head. I was just cleaning house for you in advance." Cleaning house. Lou Heron looked as if he had heard something utterly ridiculous. "Shunlan, you seem to have misunderstood a few things." His voice was low, but every word was sarcastic. "First, whether I want her or keep the child is my business. How dare you meddle? Second, Shunlan, do you think too highly of yourself? I just thought life was boring and wanted to force you back to see how you'd react."
Just teasing you like a dog.
"Did you really think you mattered?" Shunlan's face instantly turned pale. "What do you mean?" "Nothing much. Just wanted to teach someone who doesn't know their place a lesson." Lou Heron interrupted her flatly, dialed a phone number, and threw it on the table. The person on the other end respectfully called him Young Master Lou. The old master of the Lou family had secretly handed over almost all core businesses to him. Now that his status was exalted, he naturally had no need for a marriage alliance, and when he turned hostile, he was utterly ruthless. The man spoke calmly, his eyes mocking. "Miss Shunlan, it seems you have too much free time in the country. All the deals you're currently negotiating are terminated. Spread the word. Anyone who helps her is crossing me, Lou Heron. Also, her father has been wanting to use those projects to turn things around, hasn't he? Squeeze them dry. I want the Shin family to vanish from the capital circles from now on." There was no question on the other end of the line. "Understood, young Master Lou. I'll handle it immediately." Shunlan felt as if all her strength had been drained away. She collapsed into the chair, her face drained of color, her lips trembling. She couldn't utter a single word. Only now did she finally understand. There was never any true lover in the high society. His previous passionate pursuits were nothing more than amusement when he was bored. Lou Heron looked down at her pitiful state and asked casually, "Shunlan, have you remembered my rules?" 2 lines of tears fell from the corners of her eyes. Shunlan let out a self-mocking laugh and dug her nails hard into her palm. Lou Heron had drunk a little wine. Not much, just enough to wake him up. There weren't many changes in the villa. Those fluffy slippers were still on the rack by the entrance, the unfinished cat food still in the corner basket. The cold late autumn wind seeped in through a window left ajar, and the long-haired carpet had yet to be laid out. Except the air felt a little quieter, everything seemed just as it was the day he left. He didn't turn on the lights and walked toward the sofa. As soon as he sat down, something tiny seemed to press against him from beneath. He frowned, reached down, and fumbled for a moment. His fingertips touched a soft texture. He reached in and pulled it out. He realized it was an unfinished sweater, a warm light yellow color, with 2 small embroidered flowers at the collar as decoration. The alcohol was starting to hit him, making his thoughts sluggish. He stared at it for a long time before remembering. This was the one Jiangyu had knit for their unborn baby. His fingertips unconsciously traced the delicate texture. The sweater still seemed to carry her scent. Almost involuntarily, he spoke, with his usual impatience. "Jiangyu, put your stuff away. It's in the way here." The sound was abrupt and loud in the empty living room, with no response. The air indoors was cold and silent. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, The deep night stretched endlessly. It took him a long moment to slowly realize. Jiangyu was gone. She had already returned to her hometown. He lay back down on the sofa and closed his eyes. His phone vibrated in his pocket. It was Chunyi calling. The voice on the other end carried a hint of probing. I heard from Assistant Lin that you cut off all cooperation with Shinlon and even halted the Shin family's projects. Are you going for real this time? Lu Heron didn't answer. Chunyi changed the subject. By the way, did you find Jiangyu? Lu Heron said irritably. Who said I was looking for her? Chunyi paused for a moment, then chuckled along with him. Hey, if you're not looking, then you're not. I thought it was something big. Jiangyu used to go back to her hometown all the time, didn't she? In a while, she'll definitely come back crying to you again. I don't care if she comes back or not. Lu Heron cut him off coldly, then hung up. Thinking back to the timeline the day she said she had a cold, she must have been hiding from him, having an abortion at the hospital. He really has learned to be bold. He sneered coldly, an unknown emotion rising from his chest, yet finding no outlet to vent. Feeling suffocated, he simply called Lin's assistant and scolded him thoroughly. After hanging up, he thought again, it's just an unborn child anyway. Women who want to bear his child could line up from the east end of the city to the west. He grabbed the little sweater and ruthlessly threw it into the trash. Go ahead and leave. She better have some backbone and not come crying back to him like before. He was never one to look back. The transfer of power in the Lu family went smoother than expected. On the day of signing, the board members surrounded him with flattery. He gained power and became the enviable heir. There were plenty of girls wanting to cling to him. Finding an obedient one wouldn't be hard. He took in a new young girl named Jiang Yanyan, who resembled her quite a bit, blushing easily. He placed her in the same villa where Jiangyu used to live, without even moving the furniture. Days passed one after another. His life remained colorful and his career was thriving. He had people suppress the dramas Jiangyu had previously acted in, removed the advertising banners that had been hung for her, completely erasing all traces of her. Out of sight, out of mind. Gradually, he rarely thought of Jiangyu late at night anymore. The only time a thought surfaced was in the spring of the second year, when Chunyi married a wealthy heiress and posted a pregnancy belly photo on Moments. He lingered on it for a few extra seconds. If Jiangyu hadn't aborted that child back then, he would have a newborn life by now. Of course, this thought only lasted a few seconds before he extinguished it with disgust. A child was nothing. If he wanted one, he could have one anytime. Just like back then when he wanted Jiangyu to give him a child, it was only to tease her, but he never expected her to actually agree. He posed the same question to Jiang Yanyan, asking if she would give him a child. The girl's eyes sparkled with immense joy and feigning shyness. She snuggled into his arms and said, "Okay." A subtle restlessness surged in his heart. Inevitably, he compared her to Jiangyu. Jiangyu wouldn't have agreed so quickly or been so happy. The gloom in his chest rose like the tide, higher and higher. Jiang Yanyan was indeed very obedient. She wore whatever he told her to wear and did whatever he asked. But Jiangyu was not like that. She would occasionally throw little tantrums. He took Jiang Yanyan to the same restaurant he had gone to with Jiangyu and ordered the same dishes. Jiang Yanyan would smile and say it was delicious, whereas Jiangyu would stick out her tongue and say it was a bit fishy, then quietly push the plate a little toward him for him to finish. Jiangyu wouldn't treasure the luxury gifts he gave her. Instead, she would frown and complain softly, "It's so heavy. Not as good as my canvas bag." Jiangyu wouldn't throw affected tantrums waiting for him to coax her. Even if he didn't reply to her messages or went back on his word, she wouldn't get angry. She would just, the next time she saw him, piteously ask for a hug. He had thought that finding someone like her would fill the void in his heart, but only at this moment did he realize he was wrong. What he missed wasn't that gentle face, but Jiangyu herself. The Jiangyu who would stay up late to cook soup for him, the one who would only cry in his arms when wronged, the one who looked into his eyes and seriously said she'd bear him a child, the one whose heart and eyes were full of him. After going around in circles, he finally realized that all he wanted was a Jiangyu who loved him. So, he sent Jiang Yanyan away. He would never actively seek out Jiangyu. That would be too embarrassing, too beneath him. But if Jiangyu were willing to come back to him on her own, he could accept her and take care of her just like before. But seasons passed and another year went by. Jiangyu never called him or sent him a message. He had kept his private phone number all along, just in case she ever wanted to contact him again. Chun-Yi teased him with a smile, saying, "Who would have thought that our romantic and carefree young Master Lu would also take a fall over a woman?" He let out a scoff and didn't reply, but his long fingers unconsciously rubbed the edge of his phone. "It's been almost a year. She sure knows how to hold out. If she wants to play hard to get, then I'll play along." Having been accustomed to the lavish and extravagant life around him, he didn't believe she could truly stay in her hometown. Another 6 months passed, and he attended an auction where there was a pair of very beautiful wedding rings. He subconsciously recalled that he had bought rings for Jiangyu before. Women always think rings are symbols of loyalty and commitment, but to him, they were just like those luxury items, mere trinkets used to appease someone. At that time, a wife of a rival family had taken a liking to a ring with exquisite craftsmanship, and Jiangyu seemed to have glanced at it a couple of times too, apparently fond of it. So he kept raising the bid, snatched it, and tossed the box into her arms. Her almond-shaped eyes widened slightly with surprise, sparkling as she looked at him. Perhaps it was the night and the evening breeze that were just right, or perhaps her emotional response was perfectly satisfying. He was in a rare good mood, so he pulled her into his arms. While kissing her, he slid the ring onto her finger. It was a bit small and wouldn't go all the way to the base, but it was still very beautiful. "Like it?" Her cheeks were flushed. "I love it." 2 embedded red velvet boxes. But there was only one of her rings inside. She thought perhaps one had fallen out when she opened the box and was about to look down for it, but then she heard him say, "I threw the other one away." That one was clearly the men's ring. Her movements faltered. He was not a very patient man, rarely taking the trouble to guess the source of a woman's awkward moods, nor did he have the habit of explaining the reasons behind his actions. But she always managed to adjust quickly, just like back then, docilely leaning in to kiss him and saying things like, "Thank you." Later, because of filming and the ring not fitting quite right, she didn't wear it often. Until one day, he found it at the very bottom of the cabinet, with a postcard beside it. He had never allowed Jiang Yinyan to enter this bedroom, so nothing here had ever been disturbed. He was silent for a long while, but ultimately decided to unfold it and read on. "Lu Heron, these years by your side have been very happy. I fulfilled my dream of acting, saw the scenery in many places, and lived a life completely different from before. It's just a pity that I don't have much talent for acting. I caused you to lose a lot of money, and in the end, I couldn't even bring back a single award to show you. I really like Kyoto. It's always so lively here, but I often feel lonely too. The only impressions Kyoto left on me are the dazzling lights at night, and you. But you have so many friends and gatherings, and when you get busy, you rarely come to see me. I know I'm too dependent on you, and I'm afraid you'll find it annoying, so I try not to disturb you. Otherwise, you definitely call me delicate. I made the decision to have the abortion after careful thought. Don't blame me, Lu Heron. I just think a child without a father's care is pitiful. We all have to take responsibility for our choices. I miss home a lot, and I long to settle down. My parents are old and can't live without me. Once I leave, I won't come back. You gave me so many things that I can't take them all, so I left them in the cabinet. Drinking too much is bad for your health. I hope you'll eat well and go to bed on time. I heard you're going to get engaged to Shinlan. It would be too awkward for me to stay here, so I won't attend. I wish you all the best and a happy marriage. Jiang Yu." The edges of the postcard were crumpled from being pinched. His eyes reddened silently, and after a long moment, he let out a self-deprecating laugh. The lingering tenderness pressed against his chest like threads of cold air, making it hard for him to breathe for a moment. Who was she to make decisions for him? Had he said he didn't want the child? Had he said they should part ways? The emotions that had been building up for over a year finally erupted completely, reaching their peak because of this postcard. He no longer cared about dignity or reason. That very night, he booked the earliest flight to Jiangcheng, a place he had never set foot in before. He thought that with his power and influence, finding someone would be as easy as turning over his hand. But after searching high and low, his assistant only found a vague address. He wandered around an old residential area for several days without finding any trace of her. Later, he heard she had gone to teach in a remote area. So he went to various volunteer teaching sites in neighboring cities, asking about her at every school. He had always thought that Jiang Yu couldn't live without him, that whenever he wanted to find her, he could do so easily. But now he realized that if she truly wanted to hide, even if he turned Jiangqing upside down, he might never find her. He frequently traveled between Kyoto and Jiangqing, rushing back and forth for news of her. Even Chen Yi joked, suggesting he might as well settle down in Jiangqing. Another half-year passed like this until Lin, his assistant, finally found that she was teaching as a volunteer at an elementary school in a small town.
It was winter by then.
The cold wind stung like knives against the skin. At the entrance of the elementary school, she wore a thick light yellow down jacket, her hair casually tied in a bun, with a touch of light makeup, looking very gentle. Her appearance hadn't changed much. The only difference was a young man standing beside her, with handsome features. He was saying something to her that made her laugh until her eyes crinkled. The wind blew between them, and she sneezed. The young man took her hand and rubbed it to warm it up. The intimate gesture between them couldn't be faked. He felt as if a knife had stabbed his chest, a bloody pain spreading from there. For a moment, he almost lost control of his emotions, wanting to step forward and separate them. But then he saw the shining rings on their clasped hands, and his about to step out foot instantly froze. Assistant Lin asked softly behind him, "President Liu, should we go over?" His throat tightened. He opened his mouth but couldn't utter a sound. For a moment, he only felt it was ridiculous. What would he do by going over? Demand to know why she was avoiding him? Ask who that person beside her was? Or tell her how much he had suffered these past 2 years? How pathetic. Jiang Yu seemed to sense something and turned to look over. The moment their eyes met, a flicker of surprise passed through her almond-shaped eyes, but aside from that surprise, he could no longer find any other emotion in her eyes. She gently tugged at the sleeve of the young man beside her, whispered something, and then walked over. "Mr. Liu, what are you doing here?" As soon as she said that, a sense of absurdity almost overflowed from his dark eyes. "Mr. Liu?" She actually called him Mr. Liu? Such a distant and polite form of address, as if drawing a boundary between them and the 5 years of intimacy they had shared. He felt it was utterly ridiculous. "Are you here on business?" she ventured, offering him a graceful excuse. He twitched the corner of his mouth, revealing the faintest trace of a smile. "Sort of. Just passing by, taking a look." He didn't dare to say that he had been searching for her for over a year, didn't dare to say that he had traveled over mountains and rivers for this meeting, and even less dare to say that he had abandoned all his pride and reason, humbly wanting her to return to him. How could the lofty young Master Liu ever admit to having such thoughts? Jiang Yu didn't expose his clumsy lie. She simply nodded and said, "It's windy here. If you have nothing else, you should head back early." She was trying to send him away. The wind stung his eyes. He suppressed the bitterness rising in his throat and sneered with a condescending tone. "Since I'm already here, won't you take a walk with me?" She was slightly taken aback, as if troubled. "My husband is waiting for me." The word husband hung in the air. In an instant, it ignited all the pent-up emotions in Liu Heron's chest. "Now that you have a husband, you disregard your former lover? The time you've spent together is less than the time we've spent sleeping together." These words were too harsh. He saw her stunned and slightly reddened eyes, and that anger fizzled out midway. He came to an abrupt, stiff stop. The howling cold wind blew between them. He suddenly wanted to smoke a cigarette to calm himself down, but it wasn't appropriate. His eyes reddened. He took a long, deep breath. "When did you get married?" "Half a year ago." Half a year ago. That was exactly when he went to Jiangqing to look for her, but heard she had gone to teach in the countryside. A belated, sharp pain suddenly struck his heart. What if he had swallowed his pride earlier and gone to her, now they wouldn't be having this conversation across a stranger who was her husband. He hung his head in a pitiful way, his gaze pausing, then staring fixedly at the ring on her finger. It was a plain band, without much apparent value, yet it fit her better than any ring he had ever given. Jiang Yu seemed to see through his thoughts and explained, "It's a very ordinary ring." He let out a self-deprecating laugh, but in the end, he didn't say anything. "If you have nothing else, Mr. Liu, I'll take my leave first." Jiang Yu turned to leave when she suddenly heard him ask, "How have you been these past 2 years?" She was stunned for a moment, then a genuine smile bloomed at the corners of her lips. "Very well." She did not reciprocate by asking how he was. Instead, she said earnestly, "I hope you are well too, Mr. Liu." On a snowy winter day, that conversation after 2 years apart ended right there. She didn't even give him a chance to reminisce, turning around and leaving arm in arm with the young man. The sky was cold and gray, with thick snow on the ground. Most of the children in the elementary school had already left, except for a little girl in a yellow floral sweater who lingered at the back. Her cheeks were flushed red from the cold. Spotting her parents, she quickened her pace in delight and threw herself into the arms of a middle-aged man. Lou Heron was momentarily dazed. If that child hadn't been aborted back then, would there also be such a lovely little girl? Perhaps she would have had gentle eyes like Jiangyu, and when she smiled, the corners of her eyes would curve into a beautiful arc. Or maybe she would cling to him, asking him to build snowmen and have snowball fights with her, calling him sweetly daddy. Unfortunately, there are no ifs in life. Relying on Jiangyu's love, he acted recklessly time and again, and was destined to be tormented for life by belated remorse. The car slowly drove away from the city. His eyes reddened. He forcefully threw the ring he had bought at the auction out of the car window. Back when he studied abroad, the city he hated the most was London. It was always gloomy and stormy.
Now,
The city he hated the most now was this nameless northern town. Here was buried his newly budding love, and also the girl who once loved him the most. The little yellow sweater that was only half knitted, the ill-fitting diamond ring, the unborn child that belonged to them. All were buried in the snow and wind of the city, buried in memory. The car headed north all the way. He listened to the wind and snow outside, closed his eyes. Tears silently rolled down to the ground. From then on, he would never set foot in Jiang City again.